The learning landscape is changing all the time. In 2012, we're seeing the introduction of the new student loan system. There's obviously cuts right the way across the learning infrastructure. What are the biggest challenges for you right now?
I think the biggest challenge is that it's not just austerity in public sector funding. There's also some changes with employers and with individuals. So if you think about adult learning, there are three investors. There's the learner themselves, there's the state through Skills Funding Agency and other organisations, and ESF included, and then there are employers. And what we've seen is, because of the recession and the downturn and the, if you like, the hopelessness out there, all three pots of investment have been reducing. So people's opportunities have been reducing across all three types of learning. The stuff I fund myself, the stuff I expect government to pay for, and the stuff that my employer might pay for. So there's a real tightening around across all of those areas. And what worries us most of all is what we call the widening participation agenda being squeezed. And that's about, if you like, the people who aren't the ones who've succeeded through O-levels or GCSEs and A-levels and gone on to university, who are the ones who will continue learning. All of our evidence shows from surveys that they're the people who will succeed in learning and will be lifelong learners. And therefore our job is around the people, whether it be women returners to learning who had children early perhaps, people in low wage jobs who didn't succeed at school, certain ethnic minorities that underachieve at school perhaps, people with learning difficulties or disabilities. All of those groups are the ones who we think are going to be squeezed out because of that tightening of resource. And therefore what our job is, particularly through Adult Learners Week and using ESF money, is to target those people, target opportunities for them, target some sense that they can achieve and it can be powerful for them in their lives and in their work. So I think our job just gets harder, and we just have to be better at getting out there and linking with them and giving them a sense of purpose and a sense of hope, I think.
When you make learning opportunities available to people, how do you make sure that they're not just being taken up by people that would have been doing that stuff anyway and are just picking up these as new opportunities? How do you do that outreach to reach the people that you really need to?
Well, I think you have to do more than just put on an offer, So we had an adult learner who needed literacy support. She said she turned up to go into the college 7 times before she actually went in. Now, making the decision to turn up to the college was a big decision, and lots of people don't get that far. But she literally went to the front door and didn't have the courage to go through that front door. On the 8th occasion, she went in. Luckily, she had a good experience. Luckily, she got onto a course, and luckily she succeeded in a sense. Now, enormous personal courage to do that. Many people never get that far. So part of our job is to say to people, what do you do to go out to engage with people? We did a really interesting piece of work last year with the Association of Colleges and the 157 group, where we looked at what we called the role of colleges in their communities, where we've said they must do some more analysis about what the need is on their patch. Who are the people who do get involved, who do turn up to the front door, who do come in and take those opportunities, and of course, who are the people and groups of people who don't, and what needs to be done to go out, to engage with them, to talk to them, to find out what would motivate them, what would interest them, how the delivery can be changed to meet their needs, the subjects that they might be involved and engaged in. So we think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And as I said, tightening resources means that many organisations are doing less and less of that. And I think ESF is a really powerful tool for us to be able to target different groups of people in society and get those colleges and other learning organisations to go that extra step to engage with the people who need a bit more encouragement and who need something slightly different.
We've talked a lot about the challenges, the problems that are obvious to everybody at the moment, but are there grounds for optimism? Are there places within that where you can see real opportunities being created by the fact that the landscape is changing so much?
I think there are opportunities, and this is where you have to dig deep to be optimistic, really, because I think when you're looking at the level of cuts across all of the public sector and the reduced investment by employers and the tightening budgets for individuals, I think it is quite difficult sometimes to be very optimistic. But I do think that at local level, there are a set of organisations who can come together and pool resource and pool that kind of energy to try and reach out. So local authorities are playing a different role. The voluntary sector with health organisations, with colleges thinking about coming together, I think can start to pool their resource around who they target, how they target, what they offer. So health's a really good example. We know that there's lots of evidence that we can point to that says people who are more active in terms of learning are more likely to be able to lead healthy lives. Partly it's about self-esteem and confidence and well-being in terms of mental health. Partly it's about knowing about how to live healthily. And at the moment we know that there's an enormous push in health to do more public health stuff, getting out there and helping people do things that prevent them needing the acute care. So real opportunity to bring people together. And because budgets are so tight, I think people are looking to work in partnership in a different way. So those are the sorts of things we're pushing. The other thing I think that's quite important to remember is employers, who have been struggling, and many are still struggling. The best employers are thinking about how they invest in their workforce differently and starting to look for good practice, to look really to understand how they can get the most out of their staff. And learning has to be an enormous part of that. So we're also working with employers to think about the sort of good advice and best practice they can learn from about getting the most out of their staff, whether it be literacy, numeracy, whether it be specific skills for a specific role, and putting them in contact with those organisations that can perhaps use a bit of public money and a bit of the employer's money to do more. So I think partnership is a really important opportunity, and I'm cautiously optimistic about it.
Eventually we hope the economy is going to pick up. Obviously growth is part of that. We need people to be available to take up jobs when they do come back into the economy. Do you see that as being something where there's a real need at the moment to seize this opportunity to get people to reskill themselves?
I think there is. I mean, if you've got more than 1 million young people under the age of 25 who aren't in employment or training, that seems to me a wasted opportunity. Those people we absolutely know will get into work, many of them, in the next 1, 2, 3 years. Now's the time to invest in their skills development. Now's the time to think about the sorts of jobs they will be able to be ready for when those jobs appear back in the labour market. And therefore an investment in their training, an investment in their skills over the next, hopefully months, possibly years, I think is an investment for the future. And if we miss that investment, then we have two dangers. We have the first danger is that the jobs appear and we don't have people skilled to do them, and we import labour and we still keep the unemployed. The second danger is that we don't kind of inculcate in those people a sense that learning can be quite powerful. Because what we want them to be is lifelong learners. We want them to develop their skills throughout their lives, and we want them to be confident about getting engaged in learning. See it as a positive thing. See it as something that helps them in their work, in their lives, in their community, with their families. And that cultural shift that we need, I think, is as important, if you like, as the utilitarian. They need these skills to get the job, because people are going to be working for longer. People will need to stay healthy longer. Otherwise, we're going to have a very difficult society and economy.